They said the UES Nemesis couldn't be summoned away from its eternal vigil at the Sol system's edge. They were wrong. Captain Valora Caney watched the emergency transmission for the third time, her weathered face illuminated by the holographic display. The Akrilan Federation, humanity's oldest galactic ally, had activated the Pact of Last Resort. In 400 years of interstellar relations, this was unprecedented. "Play it again," she ordered, leaning forward in her command chair. The bridge crew of the Nemesis exchanged glances as the desperate face of Ambassador Jixer reappeared. Earth. The Vrexian Dominion has breached our core systems. 12 worlds fallen. Our defense fleet decimated. The transmission crackled, with interference as explosions rocked the ambassador's shelter. "We invoke the pact. Send the Nemesis. Only the Deathworlder's guardian can save us now." Valora's eyes narrowed. The Nemesis wasn't just Earth's most powerful warship. It was the vessel other species whispered about in fear, built by those strange creatures from Gravity Well 9.8, whose evolution in Earth's punishing environment had created a species that the galactic community had labeled Deathworlders. Navigator Esri, plot a course to the Akrilan homeworld. Lieutenant Reese, bring all weapons systems online. We're breaking quarantine protocol. The 7-kilometer-long vessel, more a mobile battle station than mere ship, began to awaken. Systems that had remained dormant for decades hummed to life. "Captain," said Commander Lysander Orloff, her XO, pitch-black eyes reflecting the red alert indicators. "The Council only authorized deployment of the Nemesis in case of direct assault on human territories." Valora rose from her chair, her augmented height making her tower over even the tallest crew members. "The Akrilan defended Earth during the collapse wars when we had nothing but chemical rockets and determination. We remember our debts, Commander." She turned to the tactical station where Lieutenant Reese Takarami's fingers danced across holographic interfaces. "Status on the primary weapons array? Gravitational lance at 60% charge, Captain. Mass drivers fully operational. Kinetic barriers at maximum." The ship's AI, Morrigan, manifested its projection beside Valora, a flowing constellation of light particles forming a vaguely humanoid shape. "Captain, I've analyzed Akrilan defense grids. They've lost orbital control around their homeworld. Vrexian siege platforms are already deploying." From engineering, Chief Indara Voss reported over the comms, "Displacement drive primed. We can make the jump in 3 minutes." Valora nodded. "The Vrexians believe they've cornered prey. They're about to discover they've awakened a predator." As the massive engines of the Nemesis began their distinctive harmonic resonance, a sound that had become synonymous with humanity's presence in conflict zones, Valora addressed her crew of 500. The Akrilan expected aid. "What they're getting is the deadliest ship humanity has ever built, and the finest crew I've ever served with. The Vrexians have never faced Deathworlders in open combat. Today, they learn why that was wise." The displacement, drive activated, tearing a controlled wound in space-time. The Nemesis, bristling with weapons that violated several galactic conventions, vanished from Sol's protective embrace. In deep space, the Vrexian command carrier Inevitable Conquest detected an anomalous energy signature moments before the human vessel materialized. Aboard their ship, Admiral Zeth Carr received the identification signal with disbelief. "Impossible," he whispered, compound eyes widening at the tactical display. "The humans wouldn't dare deploy the Nemesis." His second hissed a warning. "Admiral, they're powering weapons! Evasive maneuvers! All ships! Defensive formations!" But it was already too late. The Deathworlders had arrived. The Nemesis erupted into real space amid the Vrexian blockade formation, its dark hull absorbing rather than reflecting nearby starlight. Before the Vrexian ships could react, Lieutenant Reese initiated the ship's opening move. "Firing kinetic dispersal pattern Hydra," Reese announced, voice steady as thousands of hyper-accelerated metal projectiles streaked from the Nemesis's broadside arrays. The Vrexian vessels evolved from a design philosophy that prioritized energy. Shields against directed energy weapons found their defenses utterly inadequate against humanity's preference for kinetic solutions. 3 frigates disintegrated immediately, their shields useless against objects moving at appreciable percentages of light speed. Vrexian response incoming, Commander Orlov reported. 23 ships altering course to engage. Captain Caney nodded. Execute maneuver Ladon. Morrigan, deploy countermeasures. The AI's voice resonated through the command deck. Deploying electronic warfare suite. Vrexian targeting systems compromised. The Nemesis moved with impossible grace for its size, thrusters firing in precisely calculated patterns as it sliced through the disorganized Vrexian formation. Unlike the elegant energy weapons of most galactic powers, humanity's flagship employed devastatingly simple principles: mass, velocity, and humanity's unique understanding of gravitational manipulation. On the Vrexian flagship, Admiral Zeth Carr watched in growing horror. All ships, concentrate fire on their weapon emplacements, his tactical officer chittered nervously. Admiral, we cannot get targeting locks. Their electronic countermeasures are... They're using our own systems against us. That was when the Admiral realized the humans had already hacked their battle network. Screens throughout his ship displayed the same message in flawless Vrexian. Script, you should have left our friends alone. The message was followed by the insignia of Earth's Special Warfare Division, a stylized planet Earth with a single word beneath it: Deathworlders. Back on the Nemesis, Engineer Voss reported, from the engine room, Captain, gravitational lance charged to 85%. That's the best we can do without a full reactor sequence. It'll be enough, Valora replied. Target their command carrier. The Vrexian fleet attempted to regroup, bringing their energy cannons to bear on the human vessel. Beams of coherent radiation struck the Nemesis's shields, creating spectacular coronas of displaced energy. Shields holding at 73%, reported Lieutenant Esri. Their weapons were designed for Akrilan defenses, not ours. Valora leaned forward. They study their enemies. It's why they're dangerous. But they've never studied us. She turned to Reese. Fire the gravitational lance, the weapon that gave the Nemesis its fearsome reputation activated. Unlike conventional weapons, the gravitational lance didn't fire any projectile or energy burst. Instead, it created a localized distortion in space-time, momentarily increasing gravitational forces in a targeted area by a factor of thousands. The effect on the Vrexian command carrier was catastrophic. Metal buckled and compressed as the ship imploded upon itself, crushed by artificial gravitational forces that no material could withstand. The remaining Vrexian fleet witnessed their admiral's vessel collapse into a dense ball of compressed metal, no larger than a shuttle. Terror spread through their ranks. This wasn't warfare as they understood it. Vrexian fleet is breaking formation, Orlov announced with satisfaction. Multiple ships attempting emergency FTL jumps. Pursue the nearest group, ordered Valora. The rest can spread the word about what happens when you attack Earth's allies. As the Nemesis altered course to chase down the fleeing Vrexians, a weak transmission came through from the Akrilan. Surface! Ambassador Jixur's voice crackled across the comms. Captain Caney, is that truly the Nemesis? Valora allowed herself a small smile. It is, Ambassador. The cavalry has arrived. But the planetary siege platforms, they've already deployed surface-to-orbit weapons preventing any approach. We're aware, Valora replied calmly, and we came prepared. She turned to her crew. Prepare for atmospheric entry. The Nemesis is going planet-side. The bridge fell silent. The ship had never been designed to land on a planet. Captain, Orlov began, the structural integrity will hold, Valora finished. Morrigan, begin the calculations. We're bringing this fight to the ground. The Nemesis descended through Akrilan's atmosphere like an ancient god of war, wreathed in flame, defying gravity and trailing sonic booms in its wake. What the Vrexians failed to account for was that a species evolved on a high-gravity death world would build ships capable of operating in such environments. Hull temperature approaching maximum tolerances, reported Lieutenant Esri, her fingers dancing across emergency override protocols. Captain Caney stood unflinching. Compensate with cooling systems. Reroute power from non-essential decks. Commander, Orlov monitored the tactical display where dozens of red triangles, Vrexian siege platforms, tracked their descent. They're targeting us with everything they have. Let them, Valora replied. Morrigan, activate acoustic countermeasures. The AI complied, broadcasting on all frequencies. What emerged from the Nemesis's external speakers was not a message, but a sound. A carefully engineered noise that human scientists had developed after studying the neurological structure of Vrexian brains. The effect was immediate. Across the Akrilan surface, Vrexian ground forces collapsed in agony as the sound triggered their neural clusters into temporary paralysis. They expected orbital bombardment, Valora commented, watching the enemy signatures flicker and fade. Not psychological warfare. The massive ship broke through the cloud layer, now visible to the terrified Akrilan population and the stunned Vrexian invasion force. The Nemesis was never designed to look beautiful or elegant. It was a machine of war, all sharp angles and exposed weapon systems built by a species that favored function over form. Lieutenant Reese spoke up. Captain, detecting high-energy buildups from 3 siege platforms. They're powering through our countermeasures. Target and eliminate. The underside of the Nemesis opened like a blooming flower of death. Specialized atmospheric weapons, scaled down, versions of the mass drivers, launched precisely calculated payloads. The 3 siege platforms disappeared in spectacular explosions. Bring us down in the capital's central plaza, Valora ordered. Deployment teams prepare for ground operations. Engineer Voss's voice came through comms, strained but determined. Captain, we've never attempted landing procedures with a vessel this size. I can't guarantee. You built this ship to endure anything, Chief, Valora interrupted. Now prove it. The 7-kilometer behemoth slowed its descent, using a combination of conventional thrusters and gravitational countermeasures. The ground beneath shook as the Nemesis came to hover 300 meters above the Akrilan capital city, casting a shadow that covered entire districts. Ambassador Jixur and the remaining Akrilan government officials emerged from underground, bunkers to witness the impossible. Humanity's dreadnought, the ship of legends, suspended above their world like a metal moon. From the deployment bays, 500 combat-ready humans, each in powered armor designed for their death world musculature, dropped to the surface. Leading them was Commander Orlov, who had insisted on direct command of the ground force. Secure a perimeter, he ordered through the tactical network. Medics assist Akrilan wounded. Heavy weapons teams target remaining Vrexian strongholds. The humans moved with a speed and coordination that shocked even their allies. Where the Vrexians had expected the slow, methodical combat typical of most spacefaring species, they found themselves facing predators who fought with terrifying efficiency. Aboard the Nemesis, Valora received the first damage reports from ground teams. Morrigan, analyze Vrexian communications. I want to know if they're calling reinforcements. Already intercepting their distress calls, the AI responded. They are afraid, Captain. Their communications indicate they were unaware of the Nemesis's ground combat capabilities. Valora smiled grimly. The galaxy forgets we evolved to fight on land long before we took to the stars. On the surface, Commander Orlov's team located Ambassador Jixur. The Akrilan diplomat stared up at the hovering Nemesis with all 4 of his eyes wide. By the stellar ancestors, Jixur whispered. The stories about human ships, they didn't do it justice. Orlov checked his tactical display. Ambassador, we've secured the government district. The Vrexians are retreating from the capital, but They still control the northern continent. How can we help? Asked Jixer. Orlov's helmet retracted, revealing his face, a gesture of respect in Akrilan culture. Tell your people to seek shelter. The Nemesis didn't come alone. As if on cue, the sky lit up with new entry signatures. The ambassador looked up in shock as dozens of smaller human vessels, corvettes and frigates, began atmospheric entry. Orlov smiled. Captain Kane called in the rest of the fleet. On the northern continent of Akrilos, Supreme Commander Vextil of the Vrexian Dominion watched the tactical displays with mounting disbelief. What had begun as a textbook invasion was rapidly deteriorating into the worst military disaster in Vrexian history. How many human ships? He demanded from his intelligence officer. 27 confirmed signatures in atmosphere, Supreme Commander. All combat class. And the officer hesitated. Speak. Reports from our remaining orbital units indicate 3 more capital ships have arrived in system. Vextil's mandibles clicked in agitation. The Vrexian Dominion had conquered 17 species across the galactic arm. None had ever mounted such a rapid, overwhelming response. The humans were supposed to be bound by their own treaty restrictions. The Nemesis shouldn't be here. His strategic officer approached cautiously. Supreme Commander, we've decoded transmissions between the human vessels. They're calling this Operation Thermopylae. Meaning? Unknown, sir. It appears to be a historical reference. Aboard the Nemesis, Captain Caney coordinated with the newly arrived human fleet. On her command display, Admiral Octavia Frost of the UES Invictus appeared. Captain Caney, quite, "The mess you've found yourself in," Admiral Frost remarked with professional admiration. "Breaking quarantine protocols, violating council directives on deployment of the Nemesis. I'd have your commission if this weren't exactly what that ship was built for," Valora saluted. "Thank you for the reinforcements, Admiral. The moment the Akrilan invoked the pact, every available ship was mobilized. Earth honors its debts." Frost's expression turned serious. "What's your tactical assessment?" The Vrexians still hold the northern continent with approximately 30,000 ground troops and heavy armor. Their remaining orbital assets have retreated to the system's edge, but haven't jumped out system. They're waiting for reinforcements, Frost concluded. Most likely. I propose we don't give them the chance to regroup. Admiral Frost nodded. Agreed. The Invictus will handle any incoming Vrexian fleet. The Nemesis has proven its worth in atmosphere. Continue ground operations. As the communication ended, Lieutenant Reese reported, "Captain, Commander Orlov's ground teams have linked up with Akrilan resistance fighters. They're providing tactical intelligence on Vrexian positions." Valora studied the holographic map of the northern continent. "The Vrexians are consolidating forces here, in what appears to be their primary base of operations." She pointed to a mountain range. "Morrigan, can we target their command structure without leveling the entire region?" "Affirmative. Captain, the gravitational lance can be calibrated for surgical strikes at 23% power." Engineer Voss chimed in from the drive core. "Captain, I must advise against firing the lance while in atmosphere. The gravitational distortion could have unpredictable effects on the planet's tectonic stability." Valora considered this. "Alternatives?" Lieutenant Esri spoke up. "The Akrilan provided geological surveys. These mountains contain extensive natural cave systems. We could deploy Strike Team Helios through the subsurface approach. A ground assault against their central base?" Valora considered the proposal. That's exactly what they wouldn't expect from a spacefaring species. On the surface, Commander Orlov received the new orders with a predatory smile. He addressed the mixed human-Akrilan force assembled before him. "We're taking the fight directly to their command center," he announced. "Strike Team Helios will infiltrate through the cave network while the Nemesis provides distraction overhead." One of the Akrilan resistance leaders, Commander Etrix, raised concerns. "The cave systems are treacherous. Many contain toxic gas pockets. Orlov activated his helmet's environmental seals with a snap. Humans evolved breathing Earth's oxygen-nitrogen mix containing trace toxins. Our filtration systems can handle it. As the strike teams prepared, Captain Caney maneuvered the Nemesis into position above the Vrexian stronghold. Tactical. Prepare for demonstration strike. Target their perimeter defenses only. Aye, Captain. Mass drivers aligned. The Nemesis fired a controlled volley, precisely destroying the outer ring of Vrexian defenses while leaving their central. Command untouched. The message was clear. We could obliterate you, but we're choosing not to. Deep below the surface, Commander Orlov led 50 humans and 20 Ekrillan specialists through narrow tunnels. Their mission: plant gravitational disruptors that would collapse the Vrexian command structure from below while maintaining planetary stability. 200 meters to target, reported his second-in-command, Lieutenant Dax Phoenix. Orlov checked. The seismic scanner. Vrexian activity directly above. They're reinforcing their position. The team pressed forward through the darkness, guided by thermal imaging and geological maps. What the Vrexians failed to understand was that humans, having evolved on a world with predators lurking in every shadow, were perfectly adapted for this kind of infiltration. In position, Orlov finally announced. Setting charges. The specialized gravitational disruptors, miniaturized versions of the Nemesis's main weapon, would create localized gravity wells, enough to collapse the underground facility without triggering planetary instability. Charges set. Withdrawal protocol initiated. As the strike team retreated through the tunnels, the Vrexian Supreme Commander received alarming readings from beneath his feet. "What is happening?" he demanded. His science officer's voice trembled. "Energy signatures! Impossible energy signatures directly below the command center." The realization came too late. The Deathworlders had brought the fight to ground, their ground, and the Vrexians were about to learn why that was a fatal mistake. The ground beneath the Vrexian command center didn't explode. It imploded. The gravitational disruptors created precisely calculated wells of intensified gravity, pulling the structure downward with unstoppable force. What had been an impregnable fortress became a crater half a kilometer wide and 200 meters deep. Supreme Commander Vextil felt the floor give way beneath him seconds before emergency teleportation protocols activated, saving him and his senior staff, while thousands of ordinary Vrexian soldiers were left to their fate. From the Nemesis, Captain Kane watched the operation unfold through Commander Orlov's helmet feed. Gravitational collapse successful. Minimal. Environmental impact detected. Lieutenant Reese reported. Vrexian forces across the northern continent are in disarray. Their command structure has been severed. Press the advantage, Valora ordered. All ground teams coordinate with Ekrillan resistance forces. Secure population centers first. As the human forces advanced methodically across Ekrillan territory, Admiral Frost sent an urgent communication from the Invictus. Captain, long range. Sensors have detected a Vrexian reinforcement fleet. 43 ships, including 3 dreadnoughts. They'll arrive within 6 hours. Valora's expression remained impassive. Status of our fleet? The Invictus, Tempest, and Hyperion are combat ready. We've sustained minimal damage from orbital cleanup operations. And the Nemesis? Engineer Voss answered that question. Primary weapons at full capacity, Captain. Gravitational lance recharged, but our hull integrity on decks 20 through 35 is compromised from atmospheric entry. Another combat engagement could breach those sections. Valora nodded. Understood. Admiral, I propose a combined operation. The Nemesis will remain in atmosphere to complete ground operations while your battle group engages the Vrexian reinforcements at the system's edge. That leaves you without orbital support, Frost pointed out. It also gives us the element of surprise. The Vrexians won't expect us to divide our forces. After a moment's consideration, Admiral Frost agreed. Very well, Captain. We'll hold the line in orbit. Good hunting groundside. As the Admiral's image faded, Valora turned to her crew. Morrigan, compile tactical analysis of all remaining Vrexian ground forces. The AI's holographic form coalesced into a detailed map of the planet. Vrexian forces have established 3 remaining strongholds. Their troops are regrouping, but without central command, each garrison is operating independently. Perfect, Valora said. We'll isolate and eliminate each pocket of resistance. On the ground, Commander Orlov's teams had linked up with Akrilan civilians who were emerging from shelters to find their world being reclaimed. An elderly Akrilan approached Orlov, all 4 arms trembling with emotion. "You are from Earth?" the elder asked. Orlov nodded. "Commander Lysander Orlov, UES Nemesis." The elder performed a ceremonial gesture, touching each of his 4 eyes in sequence. "I was present when our peoples first met 200 years ago. We saved a single human. Exploration vessel from pirate raiders?" The elder looked up at the massive form of the Nemesis hovering above the city. "And in return, you bring your most terrifying weapon to save our entire world." "We remember our friends," Orlov replied simply. The moment was interrupted by Lieutenant Phoenix. "Commander, urgent communication from the Nemesis." The tactical update was concerning. While ground operations were proceeding successfully, the Vrexian reinforcement fleet had arrived ahead of schedule and was engaging Admiral Frost's battle group. The space battle was not going well. "The Invictus has sustained heavy damage," Captain Caney informed her ground commander. "Admiral Frost is holding position, but they're outnumbered. We need to conclude operations here immediately." Orlov surveyed the terrain. "We've secured 80% of populated areas. The remaining Vrexian strongholds are isolated." "Not good enough," Valora replied. "We need total surrender from remaining Vrexian forces. I'm authorizing use of Protocol Omega." Orlov's expression turned grave. "Understood, Captain." Protocol Omega was a demonstration of force specifically designed to compel immediate surrender. A controlled display of humanity's most terrifying capabilities, short of planet-killing weapons. The Nemesis repositioned itself above the largest remaining Vrexian stronghold. From its underside, a specialized deployment pod descended containing a single occupant, Commander Orlov himself, equipped with what appeared to be standard combat armor but was in fact much more. When the pod landed at the edge of the Vrexian perimeter, their forces immediately surrounded it with heavy weapons trained on the lone human. Orlov stepped out, unarmed, and activated his external speakers. "I am Commander Lysander Orlov of the United Earth ship Nemesis. I come to accept your unconditional surrender." The Vrexian field commander laughed, a chittering sound amplified by his own communication system. "One human against 5,000 warriors? Your arrogance exceeds even your reputation." "This isn't arrogance," Orlov replied calmly. "This is mercy, your final opportunity to live." When the Vrexian commander gave the order to fire, Orlov activated the Prometheus Protocol, a human technology that had never been deployed in combat before. His armor began to glow with energy as it channeled power directly from the Nemesis overhead. The demonstration lasted exactly 93 seconds. When it was over, Orlov stood unharmed in a perfect circle of devastation, 1 kilometer in diameter. Not a single shot had been fired from the human side. Within the hour, all remaining Vrexian forces on Akrilos had surrendered unconditionally. The Vrexian reinforcement fleet never received word of their ground forces' surrender. In the cold vacuum of space, Admiral Frost's battle group fought with desperate determination against overwhelming odds. The UES Invictus had suffered catastrophic damage to its propulsion systems, leaving it vulnerable as Vrexian dreadnoughts, closed in for the kill. The Tempest and Hyperion maneuvered to protect their flagship, but they too were taking heavy fire. Admiral Frost stood on her shattered bridge, blood trickling from a gash on her forehead. "Status of the Nemesis?" Her tactical officer struggled to read damaged displays. "Still planet-side, Admiral. They've secured the surface but would need at least 30 minutes to achieve orbit." "We don't have 30 minutes," Frost muttered, watching as 3 Vrexian dreadnoughts formed a firing line. Their main batteries began charging. energy weapons, powerful enough to crack a capital ship's hull. That was when the impossible happened. The Nemesis didn't rise from the planet's surface. It simply appeared in space behind the Rexian formation in a burst of displaced energy that temporarily blinded sensors across the battlefield. "How?" Admiral Frost whispered. On the Nemesis's bridge, Captain Caney gripped her command chair as warning indicators flashed across every console. "Displacement drive status?" she demanded. Engineer Voss's voice came through fractured comms. "Emergency spatial jump successful, but the drive core is critically unstable. We've burned out 80% of the coils. We won't be jumping again, Captain." "We won't need to," Valora replied, studying the tactical situation. The Nemesis had materialized perfectly positioned behind the Vrexian fleet, a maneuver that should have been physically impossible within a gravity well. "Target all Vrexian dreadnoughts," she ordered. "Gravitational lance at maximum charge." Lieutenant Reese hesitated for just a moment. "Captain, at full power, within this proximity to our own ships." "I know the risks," Valora cut him off. "Execute." The Nemesis's primary weapon, the gravitational lance, fired not once but 3 times in rapid succession. The energy requirements were so extreme that lights across the massive ship dimmed as power was diverted to weapons. Unlike normal space combat, there was no spectacular explosion. The 3 Vrexian dreadnoughts simply crumpled inward, their hulls compressing under forces that defied conventional physics until each mighty vessel had been reduced to a dense sphere no larger than a shuttle. The effect on the remaining Vrexian fleet was immediate. Ship after ship activated emergency jump systems, fleeing in disarray rather than face humanity's deadliest weapon. Admiral Frost opened a channel to the Nemesis. "Captain Kane, that displacement jump should have been impossible." Valora allowed herself a small smile. "The Nemesis was built to do the impossible, Admiral." "The drive core? Completely burned out. We'll need a tow home." Admiral Frost laughed, despite her injuries. "A small price to pay. The Akrillans? Secure. Their world is saved, though the recovery will take time." In the aftermath, as human medical teams assisted the Akrillans and engineering crews began repairs on the damaged fleet, Captain Valora Caney stood in the Nemesis's observation deck, looking down at the planet they had defended. Commander Orloff joined her, still wearing his combat armor, though his helmet was tucked under one arm. "The Akrillan High Council has extended formal gratitude. They're calling it the miracle of Nemesis." "No miracle," Valora replied quietly. "Just humans doing what we do best, surviving against the odds and protecting our own." "The ship will never be the same," Orlov noted. "That spatial jump destroyed, the displacement drive beyond repair. Some sacrifices are worth making." She turned to face her XO. "What did you tell that Akrillan elder? About why we came?" "That we remember our friends." Valora nodded. "The galaxy calls us Death Worlders, evolved on a hostile planet that shaped us into something they fear. But they forget what else Earth taught us." "Which is?" "That survival often depends not on what you can do alone, but on who stands beside you when the darkness comes." Ambassador Jixer was brought aboard the Nemesis for the formal surrender ceremony of the remaining Vrexian forces. The ambassador approached Captain Caney with all 4 arms extended in the Akrillan gesture of deepest respect. "Captain, the Galactic Council has requested a full accounting of this conflict. They are concerned about the deployment of the Nemesis outside of Sol system." Valora's expression hardened. "Tell them that humanity honors its pacts, all of them. The Nemesis will return to its vigil, but the galaxy should remember what happened here." "And what is that, Captain?" "That when the Akrillans expected aid, what they got was humanity's deadliest ship and our unbreakable word." As the diplomatic proceedings continued, news spread throughout the galaxy. The Death Worlders had unleashed their guardian vessel, the legendary Nemesis, and the Vrexian Dominion, conquerors of 17 worlds, had been brought to their knees in less than a standard day. Across dozens of worlds, species who had viewed humans with suspicion and fear began to reconsider their position. Perhaps having the Death Worlders as allies rather than enemies would be the wiser course, and in the silence of deep space, as the damaged but victorious Nemesis was towed back toward Earth, the ship's AI Morrigan recorded one final entry in the Bay mission logs. The Death Worlders came not to conquer but to defend, not for glory but for friendship. And in doing so, they have changed the galaxy forever.